evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube, as well as on Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and on X. I am Bryson Carver, and, you know, this is, what, 2 times out of the last 3 weeks or so that twice in the last 3 weeks that we've done a Tuesday show, but we have some massive breaking news in the NBA. We saw it literally minutes before midnight last night. Giannis Antetokounmpo traded the Heat. We'll get to that. We'll get to the ramifications for Miami, for Milwaukee, for Boston, where it looked like Giannis was going to end up, but then they end up not making the move. Jaylen Brown was offered in the trade. We do know that. What does it mean for him? What does it mean for the Celtics moving forward? There's a rumor out that coming from Miami directly. Could LeBron James not finish his career in Cleveland, not finish his career with Steph Curry in Golden State, but actually go back to Miami where he won 2 championships, play with Giannis and Bam, get to those rumors. Top 10 players in the NBA. We'll do it again based on the fact that obviously the Knicks have won the title and the fact that Giannis is now a member of the Miami Heat. End of the show, kind of giving my general predictions for tonight's NBA draft. Before we even get in any action, did want to give sort of a heads up. Tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time, myself, Mike Guido, and a number of other guests will be hosting the 6th annual Grid Network Draft live reaction show. Again, 6 Eastern, or rather 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific time. We'll be live on YouTube and on X, reacting this draft. It is, by most prognosticators and experts, one of the most loaded top-to-bottom drafts that we've had in some time. Obviously, got the kind of the big 3 going in, Devonta, Peterson, and Boozer. See how it plays out from there, but it's going to be a really fun night, so definitely stay tuned. We'll have first-round coverage tonight, second-round coverage tomorrow night. But let's get into the trade that has the entire NBA talking. But first, thank God, the Giannis Antetokounmpo trade saga is officially over. He got traded to the Miami Heat. We'll go and show you the trade details right here, right now, and Carving It Up. So right there for Miami, Giannis, Bobby Portis, they're going to Miami. The Bucks, as you can imagine, get an absolute haul. They get Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, Kel'el Ware. I hope I'm saying this kid's name correctly. He was their first-round pick last year. Kasparis Jakosionis, I believe is how you say his name. They also got a first-round pick that's actually going to be tonight, the 13th overall pick in the draft. They got a 2031 and 2033 first-round pick, a 2033 second-round pick, and a 2033 pick swap with the Miami Heat. So that's the terms of a deal. That's how it went down. How is this going to work out? Let's start with Miami. I got to admit, throughout most of yesterday, so Shams comes out. Let's start at the beginning. Shams Charania comes out, goes on ESPN, says, hey, Giannis is going to get dealt before the draft. So it could have been yesterday, it could have been the hours leading up to tonight's NBA draft. Giannis was going to get dealt. And now that we know that one of the first-round picks involved is actually going to be tonight, which goes now to Milwaukee, Miami's pick going to the Bucks, that makes sense why they wanted to get this done. Giannis going to Miami, listen, on the surface, sure, it makes them better. I mean, Giannis is a guy who, after all, his last 2 healthy seasons prior to this year, when he dealt with a cluster of injuries, it's a guy who's giving you 30 points a night, double-digit rebounds, and is shooting 60% from the field. I have religiously on the show called Giannis the most dominant player within 5 feet of the basket since the great Shaquille O'Neal. Like, it's nothing you can do down there. But when you look at this, you say, okay, it's not like Miami was that good a year ago. They were the 10 seed and got knocked out by Charlotte. And you saw what happened to Charlotte again in their second playoff, or playing game, I should say, against the Magic. Clobbered. Lost in Charlotte. You're the 10 seed. Really, the highlight of the season was a moment that I don't think any of us can really still believe, that Bam Adebayo scored 83 points in a game and broke Kobe Bryant's second-place record, broke the modern record for scoring in a game. But you look at the roster today, it's like, oh, Giannis is special. Indisputably a top 10 player in the league. Spoiler alert, he's going to be in my top 10 players in the NBA coming up later in the show. Stay tuned for that. Bam Adebayo is, what do we get? Give him a top 25, 30 player in the NBA? So he's excellent, good defensively, although not quite as good as he once was. He's not going to give you 83, as no one in the history of the NBA except for Wilt did. But he can give you, 18 to 20 points, good defense, double-digit rebounds, all that. And then you go down from there, and it's Andrew Wiggins. I can speak as a Warriors fan. Wiggins had the one special year in 2022. God bless him. Helped us get a ring. And outside of that, at this point, he's 15 a game, decent defense, effort and consistency really just depends on the night. You have no idea with this guy. My guess is the Heat probably deal him this offseason. Then you have the Norman Powell component, which, listen, Norman Powell has been discussed in the last 4 months, probably more than he has at any point in his career. 4 months ago, it was, oh my gosh, how does Norman Powell not make the All-Star game over LeBron James? Well, it's A, LeBron was better even in year 23, and B, Norman Powell did still end up making the All-Star game, so chill. And the second thing is, oh man, Norman Powell, big three with Giannis and bam. Here's the problem. Norman Powell's coming off a career year, first time making the All-Star game, gave you 21 a night, and he's an unrestricted free agent. So he's going to command a lot of money. And does Miami have the resources? Are they able to bring him back? My guess is they probably trade Wiggins just to get some depth and to get off the contract, and then they bring back, I should say, Norman Powell, but he's a two guard. Like right now, as we see here today, the Miami Heat do not have a point guard, or at least a star caliber guy to set up Giannis in good position, give Bam his touches. They don't have that today. Like the depth of having obviously Hero and Jaquez and Khalil Ware who can shoot threes, good 7-footer, that's gone. And they obviously don't have their picks because they gave it to Milwaukee. And so when I say here today, yes, the East is by conventional wisdom much weaker than the West. I still sit here today and say, obviously the Knicks are miles better. The Knicks are miles better than the entire East. That goes without saying. And then from there, look, y'all know my reservations I have about Cleveland, in particular James Harden, but they did just go to the Eastern Conference Finals, and Donovan Mitchell traditionally has been a playoff riser. They're well coached. Kenny Atkinson, he had the terrible quote about analytics. The man can coach, good size, all of it, good bench. So Cleveland's better. Detroit, I don't know, Detroit just won 60 games. They were the 1 seed in the East. They're pretty good, is my guess. So you have that component. Then you look down the East from there. Let's not forget the Indiana Pacers. Last time they were healthy, they were in a Game 7 of the Finals. And then they made a bad trade in the Zubats trade with the Clippers that it looks like the Clippers probably won. But Halliburton's coming back healthy. You've got Pascal Siakam. It's a good roster in Indiana. They're going to be a factor in the East next season. And then you look around the rest of the conference. It's like, well, Atlanta Hawks. You sit here today and you're a Hawks fan. You're like, hey, wait a second. The Knicks blew through Philly. They blew through Cleveland. They had to come back multiple times on San Antonio, but they still beat them in 5. Hey, we took them 6 games. We gave the Knicks a deeper playoff run than anybody. Jalen Johnson, you've got all these guys on the roster. I'm not saying they're a contender in the East, but aren't they kind of on par with Miami? I kind of put Miami in that Atlanta-Indiana group, and I would give Indiana the advantage just because of experience in the playoffs. And so you see here today, if you're a Heat fan, listen, you should be excited. You're getting one of the 10 best players in the league, by some accounts, maybe one of the 5 best players in the league, but there is the injury history. Like I found myself when I was doing research for the show, I was very surprised. Giannis is 31 years old. Like, doesn't it feel like, no disrespect, but doesn't it feel like he's more like 33, 4, just because of the accumulation of injuries? Because it's very oddly similar to the Kevin Durant syndrome, where Kevin Durant was throughout the entirety of his 20s in OKC and in Golden State. Man, this guy was more years than not, bare minimum, in the Western Conference Finals. And then post-Golden State into his 30s, he's never been to the conference finals since. I think he's only been to the second round twice. Like, it's just not been that same productivity, even though KD's individual production, some numbers would tell you he's been better than he was in his 20s. But the team's success hasn't been there. Same thing with Giannis. I saw a stat today that in Giannis's first 8 years in Milwaukee, he was giving you like 27 a night. Since then, he's given you 30 a night. But let's look at the last four seasons. 2023, Milwaukee's the 1 seed. Giannis is a legit MVP candidate. They got the whole squad together: Middleton, Drew Holiday, Brook Lopez, the whole crew. Giannis hurts his back in Game 1 against these Miami Heat. Remember, that was the series where Jimmy Butler had the 56 burger in Game 4. Giannis isn't healthy. The Bucks blow a bunch of leads, and they get gentlemen swept by an 8 seed. Now, granted, that 8 seed did go to the finals, but that still happened. Then you go to 2024. Giannis doesn't play a single game in that playoffs because he's hurt. Chris Middleton and Damian Lillard do all they can, but they lose in 6 to Indiana. Then the year after that, they play the Pacers again, but Damian Lillard has the Achilles. Giannis isn't 100%, and they get gentlemen swept. Halliburton obviously hits the game-winning layup. And then last year, the Bucks are an abject disaster. Damian Lillard gets moved, or technically Lillard left in free agency. The roster is just not good. I mean, it's Kyle Kuzma, Miles Turner, good players, but come on, this is not going to be that Bucks team that won a title in 2021 or was getting the 1 seed in the 2 years prior to that. So last 4 years, it's first round loss, gentlemen swept. First round loss in which you didn't play a single game because of injury. Gentlemen swept in the first round in 2025. And then last year, you don't even sniff the playoffs. And I'm not blaming all that on Giannis. Some of that's organizational dysfunction in Milwaukee. Some of that's the fact that they brought in Doc Rivers, which we called from day one was a bad move. The Adrian Griffin firing. It was utter chaos in that organization. And Milwaukee is in an objectively better spot moving forward than they were previously. But there is an element of there's a very high possibility that we've seen the best of Giannis. Now, that's not to say he can't still give you, 27 a night, can't do it on, at bare minimum, 55+% shooting because of where he's getting his points. But the way Miami's constructed today, let's see how the rest of the offseason plays out. But they don't have a point guard. They don't have depth. Like, you can say Heat culture and Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra all you want, and Bam and Giannis are an unbelievable front court. But you're going to have to bring Norman Powell back to get some perimeter scoring on your team. And again, you don't have a point guard. You don't have depth. And if the last few NBA champions have shown us anything, like look at the Knicks this year. What's one of the many reasons the Knicks finally broke through and won the title? Because Mike Brown, unlike his predecessor, believed in using a bench. You had Landry Shamet, you had Jose Alvarado, Mitchell Robinson showing up and giving the Knicks good minutes. Last year, the Pacers and the Thunder, both very deep teams, go 7 games in the finals. Excuse me. The Boston Celtics, they had depth. They had Al Horford. They had Peyton Pritchard, all these guys. And you look at this Miami Heat team today, and if you're getting Giannis, you believe that you can contend for a championship. The way that roster's put together today, it's early. Excuse me, it's early. They've got to use, some of their capital in order to get a point guard. They probably move Wiggins, is my guess. I don't see this team being a contender. I really don't. And so if you're a Heat fan, yeah, you should be excited. Giannis is awesome, but you're still not a contender today. As for Milwaukee, I think, is this the best deal you, excuse me, is this the best deal you could have gotten? Probably. Now, there's the element of, and we'll get to Boston after the break, or I guess after the segment. There's the element of Boston where the reports were it was 2 first-round picks and Jaylen Brown. And that Milwaukee probably would have wanted them to include like a Baylor Shireman or somebody like that just to add some depth. Obviously, there's the conventional thinking that, well, wait a second. The Celtics are supposed to be better than the Heat. Therefore, those first-round picks won't be quite as valuable. So let's get more first-round picks from Milwaukee. Yes, we don't get, or from Miami, I should say. You don't get the star power that you would if you would get a Jaylen Brown, but we have pieces, we have flexibility to kind of do whatever we want to do to rebuild a roster. And so you look at the Bucks today, again, they've gotten a lot of bad contracts off the books. Doc Rivers is gone. Like it's a new start. The Bucks aren't going to be very good next year, even in a bad East. And that's where they needed to be. It's frankly, let's be honest, it's where this franchise needed and where Giannis needed to be 2 years ago. Like it felt like Giannis was kind of following in the Kevin Garnett footsteps where, now, by the way, more successful than KG was in Minnesota because he got a championship and double the MVPs that KG got. But where it's, yeah, you're a great player, you're arguably the greatest in the history of their franchise, you're not sniffing anything. You're not. Again, Milwaukee made some moves, tried to improve the roster post-2021 title, and it just didn't work. And so this was a move that needed to happen well before it should have. That said, all things considered, it was reported that there were only 3 teams that Giannis was going to sign an extension with, and that's Miami, Boston, and Minnesota. Well, Minnesota is completely devoid of draft picks. Boston has some and Jaylen Brown, but the Miami Heat, in the eyes of the Bucks, I imagine, hey, Jaime Jaquez can play. Khalil Ware, we're getting their first-round pick from a year ago, so it's basically like getting 4 first-round picks for Giannis. Tyler Hero is an excellent player. We feel like we can kind of build something around that. We can go into this multi-year rebuilding process and see if we can do something. Hopefully, you turn one of those picks into being certainly not Giannis, but into being a franchise-level guy. Only time will tell. We'll see how it plays out. As we sit here today, I got to say, if there is a winner, sometimes there are trades where there's winners on both sides, there's losers on both sides. I tend to be going in the direction of the losers on both sides because the Bucks should have made this trade well before they did. But if you ask me to make a pick, I'd say it's probably Milwaukee. Giannis is 31, dealing with injuries. The Heat are not close to a championship roster. I mean, I feel like right now, what is this, June? So 10 months from now, we're going into the NBA playoffs 2027, and it's the 6 seed Heat taking on the 3 seed Cavs. And I would probably pick Cleveland to win that series. Like that's where we sit today. So I get Miami making this move. It helps, obviously, but at the end of the day, I just don't think it's one that's going to lead to championship contention. Got a comment here, it looks like, from the Grid Network, which we are streaming from right now. Says they will lose Powell due to cap issues. That's likely. I mean, the only way they're able to bring Powell back is if they trade Wiggins. because Powell's going to command a big salary, as he should. He just had the best year of his career. He averaged 21 a game. He was an all-star. But again, even with Powell and Wiggins and Bam and the guys that they just traded to Milwaukee, I get it. None of those guys are Giannis, but still 10 seed, knocked out in the play-in tournament. Like, we have to be honest about where this franchise is at today, and they're not close to contention. Now, maybe a year from now they would be, but I don't see it happening, from there. So we'll see how it plays out. Here's the story I'm a lot more interested in, though, as it relates to the Giannis sweepstakes. And that's the Boston Celtics. So, based on the reporting over the last week, over really the 24 hours preceding the actual trade getting done near midnight last night, the Vegas odds reflected it. I think the general kind of consensus was, all right, great big men and forwards in Boston. It was Bill Russell, then it was Larry Bird, then it was Kevin Garnett, and now it's going to be Giannis. Like, he's going to follow in those great footsteps of Celtics legends in the front court. And because it felt like, well, Boston's got multiple picks. Boston's got, of the teams that can realistically get Giannis, Boston's got by far the best player that they can give Milwaukee, and Jaylen Brown, who was second-team All-NBA, averaged almost 30 a game last year. And it feels like, it was, as we say today, if you add Giannis to the Celtics, it's him, Jason Tatum. It would, in all likelihood, I think an underrated story is, had they added Giannis, does Joe Mazzulla, maybe he changes this anyway, but all the criticisms that I and many others have had about how the Celtics play and how over-reliant on the three they are, does this finally change their way of thinking? Does this finally make them adjust to, okay, guys, we can shoot the three ball. We've got shooters on this team. That cannot be our only form of offense, because Giannis obviously isn't a shooter. Now that's gone. And again, had Giannis went to Boston, they're probably the favorites in the East today. I don't know if I would agree with that. I think I'd still give the Knicks a slight advantage, but it'd be Knicks-Boston right there as the top two clear favorites in the East. Now, Knicks, to me, are by far the best team in the East, and Boston is in a weird spot where, as the roster sits here today, they're a contender. I mean, listen, they blew a 3-1 lead to Philly last year, and that was a disastrous collapse. At the same time, Brown was a legit MVP candidate. He was not to the level of like a Shea or a Wemby or a Jokic or anything like that, but he was kind of on that second tier of MVP candidates. Tatum barely played. When he did, little inconsistent, understandably so, coming off an Achilles, and we were the 2 seed. And if we don't, again, just totally collapse against Philadelphia, I mean, the Celtics, I would have picked the Knicks. Make no mistake about it. I said all season I thought the Knicks were better than Boston. But they wouldn't have gotten swept. It probably been a competitive series. And now you see here today, they're the second best team in the East, I think, in the eyes of most. Tatum and Brown are still easily one of the top 3 duos left in the league. But Jaylen Brown, this is now multiple years that in his head, just think if you're in Jaylen Brown's position, it's like, wait a second. Okay, first of all, I got here before Tatum did. 3rd overall pick out of Cal Berkeley, 2016. Tatum gets here, 3rd overall pick out of Duke in 2017. So I've been here longer. I get seniority by a year. We won we went to the finals 2022. We won a championship in 2024, and Tatum won MVP. That was me. Matter of fact, as like a cherry on top, I was also the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. So the last 2 series against the Pacers in the conference finals and against the Mavs in the NBA finals, I was the best player. And then when Tatum goes down with the Achilles, it's like, oh, Boston's done. They're cooked. And then I average almost 30 a game and lead us to the 2 seed without Tatum for most of the year. And you want to trade me? Not Tatum. You want to trade me? And by the way, this is now multiple years in which there have been at least flirtations between the Celtics and the Bucks, or at least discussions about a big Boston trade that involves Jaylen Brown in some way, shape, and form. I remember 4 years ago when KD was in Brooklyn, it was like, man, KD's going to get dealt to the Celtics, and Jaylen Brown's going to be a part of that deal. So in the eyes of Jaylen Brown, in playoff series, I can make a case I've been better than Tatum. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Matter of fact, I probably don't, but he's got a finals MVP to prove it from 2024. He had the best season of his career, first-team All-NBA caliber type of play. I've shown I can lead this franchise, and you want to move me? Shams reported today, and it did not surprise me or I think anybody, that the Celtics are listening to offers for Jaylen Brown. And I think at this point, I don't think Jaylen would like hold out or not show up to training camp. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think he would. Because again, he shows up, the Celtics are still a very real threat in the East next year with a healthy Tatum. With that being said, with all the discussions, with all of the circumstances surrounding the Celtics, with the fact that Jaylen Brown, his words, not mine, after blowing a 3-1 lead to the Philadelphia 76ers in the first round, you lose a Game 7 at home, goes on, he's been very active on Twitch. God bless him. We're live on Twitch right now. He goes on Twitch and says, yeah, favorite year of my career. Like, blew a 3-1 lead in the first round. It's the favorite year of your career? Well, yeah, in his eyes, it's, yeah, because I finally got to show how good I am as the clear number one, as the guy to lead this team, and no one thought we could do anything, and I got us to the 2 seed. And I had the best year of my career individually. And so with all of those things, I think Jaylen Brown would have probably embraced going to Milwaukee. Like, yeah, it's a rebuilding situation, but I'm still a top 10, top 12 player in the league. Like, I can make us relevant. I can make us maybe not a contender in the East, but a factor in the East, somebody that would, in the first round, like scare a team like New York or Boston or somebody like that, Cleveland. And now Boston missed out on their best opportunity to get better by adding Giannis. Because you got to consider, if you've got, I mean, let's just say this out loud. If Jason Tatum is your second best player, holy cow, that's a team. Giannis, Tatum, you've got Derek White, a solid bench. Those guys are going to get better. You got Peyton Pritchard. You are in really, really good shape to compete with the Knicks and potentially win the East next year. Joe Mazzulla, again, another year as the head coach of this team. And now it's, we think we can beat the Knicks as presently constructed. But is that what's best for the locker room? Is that what's best for Brown? Heck, is that what's best for Tatum? And so my guess, I think Brown gets dealt when, I have no idea. I mean, it could be in the weeks leading up to the season. Like, this could be a multi-month kind of saga here where it's maybe there's a game of chicken. The Celtics are like, hey, Jaylen, stay here. We can win a championship. And Jaylen's like, oh, funny. We can win a championship with me, but you're willing to move off me in a second for a guy in Giannis who is great. Jaylen Brown would obviously recognize that. But from his perspective, it's, I just had the best year of my career, and he was hurt for more than half the season, and you want to move me for him. Like, I've won a finals MVP more recently than him. How does that make sense? So I don't think in terms of the locker room, in terms of the relationship between Jaylen Brown and the organization, I don't think it's tenable. So if I had to make a prediction today, this is maybe galaxy brain, but let's just throw this out there. Because we haven't heard that much trade buzz around this player that I'm about to mention because of the honest reports of the last few months. But I don't think his situation where he's at now is all that tenable, especially in the locker room. Just throwing this out there. How about Jaylen Brown? You'll have multiple pieces involved in this, but the Celtics would not have to give up the capital to Milwaukee as they would to Houston for Kevin Durant. So your two wings are both excellent perimeter scorers, Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant. You still got good guard play. You've got Derek White. You've got Peyton Pritchard. You got some good size. You're good. Like, you are set to win the East. Now, from Boston's perspective, would it be, okay, Houston tried to add KD to get better. That didn't work. The Suns tried to add KD to get better. That didn't work. The Nets tried. They underachieved. Well, what makes you think it's going to work in Boston? My response would be, well, and Houston's relatively well run, but Boston's one of the best run organizations in basketball. We know that. Brad Stevens done a good job. They draft well, all of it. You plug him into that situation where people aren't hinging KD's legacy on, oh, can you win a championship in Boston? Like that's on Tatum's shoulders. Like that, there's going to be more pressure on Tatum to say, hey, Jaylen Brown was better than you in those finals in 2024 when you beat the Dallas Mavericks. You were actually, if we're being honest, quite bad in the first 4 games of that series before he had a big game 5. I think he had like 30 points in your 30-point triple-double. You put KD in that situation. I think it works for both teams. You add Jaylen Brown to Houston to where it's like, oh, man, you got Jaylen Brown, you got Şengün, you got Amen Thompson, Reed Sheppard. Like, you've got a nice group of young guys. And I think Jaylen Brown, who would obviously be the best player on that team, would embrace that in a second. Like, that is a team that could maybe not win the West, but if you put Jaylen Brown in the Rockets and they're on the Western Conference Finals, is that a scenario that none of us could see happening? Of course not. So just throw that out there. I think there's a number of teams. The Hawks have been suggested. Boston could move him to Atlanta and just get kind of like some ancillary pieces to add around Tatum. Jonathan Kuminga would be a part of that deal, I would imagine. But Boston's in need of a number 2 star if they're moving off Jaylen Brown. Like, the only way to me you trade him is if you get a guy either equivalent to the caliber of player of Jaylen Brown or close. You're not moving Jaylen Brown for parts. Because Boston had Jaylen Brown for most of the season without Tatum. They had a good group of role guys, and it got them bouncing round 1. Like when the Celtics won the title, it was Tatum, it was Brown, it was Porzingis and Drew Holiday and Al Horford and Pritchard, all these guys. It's been kind of a top-heavy group, and that's worked for the Celtics in the past. I don't think going one superstar and then all depth is necessarily the way to go based on how they play, based on what's been successful for them in the past. So we'll see how it plays out. I think Jaylen Brown to Houston is very much on the board, so watch out for that. Got a few comments. Adam Hurley in the comments, he says, the Bucks won the trade. The Heat are nothing now. They're worse than the Bucks last year. I don't know if I go that far in the Bucks. What did they win? 30? What did they win? Let me double check. I think they won like 33 games. And a lot of that's because Giannis was hurt, but still, they weren't very good. Sorry, they won 32 games and missed the play-in tournament by 11. Like, the Heat were 11 games better than the Bucks. Giannis missed most of the year, but still. But I do kind of generally agree with the sentiment. I don't agree that they'll be worse than Milwaukee, because if they are, they'd be a complete disaster. But I said in my instant reaction video on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, I said, look, it feels like it's just a better version of Milwaukee. Like, obviously, a way better coach. Spo is a Hall of Famer. You get Bam Adebayo, who's better than any of the teammates in Milwaukee, but you also have no depth and no point guard. And Norman Powell's probably gone. So it moves the needle for Miami, but not to championship status. Absolutely not. If the Heat took on the Knicks, I think that series is over if it goes to a 5th game, I'm kind of surprised, honestly. So there's where we're at. Got a comment from Shino Smith. Is that a play on Gino? Oh, man, Gino. Yikes. What is going on over there? I'm a Lakers fan. Hope y'all do something like the Mavs did and give us Brown for Reeves. I mean, listen, the Lakers, I think, of all franchises should know that, of getting the gift of a terrible GM doing business with you, getting Luka from the Mavs for AD and a box of cookies. But no, that is most certainly not going to happen. That would have to be like a sign and trade, and that ain't going to happen. Although Brown and Luka would be an interesting duo, but the Lakers just don't have the assets to make that happen. Okay, we're going to take a 1-minute break. I mentioned the Lakers, and this LeBron James free agency saga, it's not quite as fascinating as the decision in 2010 or even in 2018 when he left Cleveland to go to the Lakers. But it's fascinating in the sense of, hey, this is maybe the greatest player of all time. Where is he going to finish his career? Because this is probably wherever he goes or stays, if it's the Lakers, that's probably it. There's a new report suggesting maybe he also goes to the Miami Heat, where he obviously won 2 championships in 2012 and 2013. We'll get into that report, rank my top 10 players in the NBA, and then predict how tonight's NBA draft is going to play out. All that in just 1 minute on Carving Up Live. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Appreciate everybody for stopping by on this special Tuesday show. So a couple orders of business before we move on to the potential LeBron to the Heat rumors. Again tonight, at the time we're live, in about an hour and a half, tune in to the Grid Network's 2026 NBA Draft Live Reaction Show. We'll be live 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. You see right there, myself, Mike Guido. We'll have a number of other guests discussing the draft. You see kind of the three sort of headliners. You got Darren Peterson from Kansas, you got Cam Boozer from Duke, and you've got AJ DeBonsa from BYU, who's probably going to be the number 1 overall pick to the Wizards. We'll see how that plays out, but tons to get into in the draft. This is the deepest NBA draft since probably 2018, and that 2018 is going to go down as, I don't want to say 2003 caliber or 1984 or 1996 caliber, but go back to 2018, it's like, man, like DeAndre Ayton as the first pick was a little weird, and you had, I think it was, God, who was it that went to the Kings number 2? Marvin Bagley, I think is who it was, number 2 to the Kings. Then from there, Luka, Trae Young, Mikal Bridges was in that draft. Jalen Brunson was a second-round pick in that 2018 NBA draft. So you go back to that 18 draft, it's like, holy cow. This is probably the best one that we've had since then, just in terms of high-end talent and in depth. And so I'm really excited. So myself, Guido will be there. It's going to be a blast. So tune in 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time to the Grid Network's 2026 NBA Draft Live Reaction Show. And also, this will, in all likelihood, be our only episode of Carving Up Live this week. High chance we'll be back next week at the start of free agency. Again, the LeBron stuff, we'll see how it plays out. I am as hopeful as anybody that he finishes his career where he should finish his career, and that's playing with his buddies Steph Curry and Draymond Green, the Golden State Warriors. Make it the Olden State Warriors, baby. Let's go. But there's a new report that came out from Miami, actually. It's according to Florida Sports Buzz. LeBron James returning to Miami cannot be ruled out. This is their quote. The Heat could try and lure impending free agent LeBron James with its full mid-level exception, but a James return is considered a long shot, though nothing can be ruled out. So, overwhelmingly likely, Bron does not go to Miami. Like, I would be, honestly, I'd be kind of shocked, because Bron's played for 3 teams, Cavs, Heat, Lakers. The Lakers feel like, of those 3, the most likely destination, because A, he's there already, and B, he loves Los Angeles. It would kind of make sense to a degree. But then there's but he could go back to Cleveland and finish his career at home. Like, when we think of LeBron James among the 3 teams, we think of him as a Cav. The greatest achievement of his career was, don't remind me, 2016 with the Cavs against the Warriors, coming back from 3-1, the triple-double in Game 7, all of it. That makes sense from a nostalgia perspective. And the Cavs are a good team. Golden State makes sense from a nostalgia perspective of, hey, Bron and Steph defined the 2010s era of NBA basketball. And plus, their games fit absolutely flawlessly together, as evidenced by the Olympics in 2024. So you put LeBron on the Warriors, it's Steph, Bron, Draymond, Jimmy Butler, Porzingis. Probably not going to win the West, but they're at least an interesting squad to follow. Old team, but if they're healthy, they're interesting. Miami, it's funny. Talking earlier on the show about how, like, yeah, Giannis makes them better, but they don't have a bench and they don't have a point guard. LeBron would basically play that role. So you have LeBron at the point guard position. You got Giannis, you got Bam Adebayo as, your big. You're probably not able to bring Norman Powell back again, unless you move Andrew Wiggins. If you bring LeBron in, Wiggins is almost certainly gone, because Wiggins minus the point guard role is kind of already in that spot for the Heat. There's a few downsides, though. Number one, from a basketball perspective, and this is already the case with Miami, they can't shoot. Bam Adebayo can make the occasional 3. Giannis just doesn't shoot them because he's not very good at shooting 3s. Wiggins can knock down the occasional 3, but it's very spotty. It's very inconsistent. And again, Miami gave up their best shooters. Khalil Ware can knock down the 3. Jaime Jaquez can. We know Tyler Hero can. So shooting's out the back door. You bring Giannis in, and if you were to bring LeBron in, it's star power. It's a fun roster to watch. But even from let's be honest, because this factors into the retirement conversation. Don't we always look at it as kind of weird, like, man, why did Patrick Ewing have to finish his career on the Raptors? Yeah. Why did oh my gosh, what's his name? Hakeem Olajuwon have to finish, Ewing finished his career with the Orlando Magic. Hakeem Olajuwon finished his career with the Raptors. Like, that doesn't work. That doesn't make sense. Even Kevin Garnett, he was with Brooklyn briefly, but Kevin Garnett, if he wasn't going to finish in Boston, he had to finish in Minnesota, and he did. Kobe Bryant, whole career with the Lakers. Duncan, whole career with the Spurs. Dirk, whole career with the Mavs. Steph's almost certainly going to play his whole career in Golden State. Like, that's obviously off the table for LeBron playing for just one franchise. But if he's going to go to somewhere where he's already played, it's either stay in LA or go to the Cavs. Like, we kind of look at the Miami chapter of LeBron's career is so fascinating because everybody acknowledges, like, it's consensus opinion 100 times out of 100. Yeah, the 4 years LeBron was in Miami, he was easily the best player in the league. No question about it. He won 2 league MVPs, went to 4 straight finals, won 2 championships, 2 finals MVPs. He had a stranglehold in the NBA in that 4-year stretch and before and after that, obviously. But some argue that's the best LeBron we saw. We think about the 2012 performance, the 45 Game 6 against Boston. We think about he was underratedly great in the 2013 finals, but could have won unanimous MVP, should have won Defensive Player of the Year that season over Marc Gasol, which is a travesty. But regardless, and even in 2014, that Heat team, Wade was beat up, Bosh wasn't the same player, and LeBron took him to the finals, averaging 28 on 57% shooting against the San Antonio Spurs. So we view that as by far the best. LeBron was by far the best player in that span. The Heat, bare minimum, were in the NBA Finals every single year. But it's also the decision that came before that. There's the 2011 collapse against Dallas, which is the low point of LeBron's career. He hadn't won a championship in Cleveland yet. And even when he was in Miami, when he was easily the best player in the league, that was still Dwayne Wade's city. It was still Wade County. Like that, he was the guy in Miami. Still more beloved than LeBron, even though he obviously wasn't close to the player, even at that stage, as LeBron James was. And so it would feel kind of weird if, of the 3 destinations LeBron has been, the least sentimental one is where he finishes. Like the Lakers, he won the title. Like something that does not get recognized enough when it comes to LeBron's legacy, and there's obviously a ton to talk about with that, is that, and people like to poo-poo the bubble. Again, ask any NBA player about the bubble. It's some of the toughest basketball that they played, just in terms of competition, being away from your family. You don't get to play at home. Like that was, ask any player that was in the bubble, they'll tell you it was brutal. It does not get discussed enough about this guy that after the just tragic passing of Kobe Bryant, his daughter, the 7 others in that crash, right after that season, LeBron leads the Lakers to a championship. Like that to me was not nearly then and now enough of a story as it was, because people like to poo-poo the bubble, and it happened in October, not June, because of COVID, and it was weird. But LeBron kind of lifted the city from the kind of the despair and the devastation of losing probably the most beloved Laker ever, Kobe Bryant. And then in Cleveland, that doesn't even need to be restated. We know what he did there. It's from there, came back from a 3-1 deficit on the 73-win Warriors. Whereas in Miami, yeah, you were supposed to win. Like that, it was some people looking at it as a disappointment that they only got 2 championships in LeBron's 4 seasons there. So it'd feel weird if that's where he finishes. And then from an on basketball, on the court perspective, he would fill a need of being their de facto point guard. But he can, obviously, we know LeBron can knock down the 3, but he's not a shooter, so to speak. Giannis definitely isn't. Bam, more often than not, is not. Like it just kind of goes to this feels like it's more of a suggestion, more of a, hey, they have the money to do it. It's not out of the cards completely, but also he's way more likely to stay with LA, go to Cleveland, or go to Golden State. Like that, those, I think everyone generally agrees, those are the 3 spots. Like Miami is just, it's weird. It doesn't make sense for the end of his career. Like D-Wade, D-Wade mentioned guys that finished their career in weird locations. Dwayne Wade plays 13 years in Miami. He has kind of the rift with Pat Riley, goes to the Chicago Bulls, which he's from Chicago, so it made a little bit of sense, but they weren't that good. And then he gets traded or gets bought out, goes to the Cavs, and he's buddies with LeBron, but that's LeBron's city. And then he gets moved back to Miami, and it's like, oh, D-Wade was always supposed to finish his career as a Heat. If LeBron's not going to play with Steph, then he's supposed to finish as a Cav or a Laker, not a Heat. It just doesn't make sense narratively. So there you go. So we did this last Monday, but I figure in lieu of the Giannis trade, and also in lieu of the fact that when we did this list, Giannis was still a buck. So we got to update it a little bit. Every single year, I go into the playoffs. I do the same with quarterbacks in the NFL. Here's my top 10. We can actually show you my top 10 coming into the playoffs a year ago, or I should say 2 months ago. This is what it looked like. So from 1 to 10, it was Jokic, Shea, Wemby, Giannis, Luka, Ant-Man, Steph, Cade, Jaylen Brown, and Jalen Brunson at 10. Spoiler alert, Jalen Brunson's going to be a little bit higher in this list. That was what the list looked like. It's obviously going to look very, very different coming out of the playoffs. So let's go and get started at number 10, 10th best player in the NBA. We discussed him a lot throughout today's show. Might not be playing for this team that much longer. It's Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics is the 10th best player in the NBA, and here's why. So average nearly 30 a game. No one expected Boston to be any factor in the East. And you can make the case and say, well, yeah, they weren't. They got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. But you could also say they were the 2 seed. Brown with average 30 a game, could have easily been named first team All-NBA. I probably would have given him the slight nod over Cade Cunningham, but was absolutely sensational. Showed that, yeah, I can carry a team that's good, but not necessarily championship caliber to being one of the better teams in the NBA record-wise. So if he gets moved to a team like a Houston Rockets in a potential Kevin Durant deal, you put Jaylen Brown in Houston with those young guys. That's a really interesting squad in the Western Conference. Jaylen Brown really showed me a lot this year. He's the 10th best player in the NBA. At number 9, listen, he's getting older, but he's still good. It's my man, the greatest shooter of all time, Steph Curry. Steph Curry from the Golden State Warriors is the 9th best player in basketball. Let's not forget that, yes, he missed over a half the season with the runner's knee, kept him out from late January to early April. In the games he played, he still averaged 26 a night. Like, Steph is still capable of giving you 30 any given occasion. We saw that playing game against the Clippers when he gave you, 34, went crazy in the second half, hit the game-winning shot with under a minute to go. Like, it's, as a Warriors fan, it's frustrating to watch because it's, man, Steph's kind of moving out of his prime now, and in the tail end of his prime, Golden State never even gave him a championship-level roster, and he still won a championship, by the way, in 2022 with a roster that had no business doing that. Steph's still easily the best shooter in the league, can still give you 30 points a game. He's special. Long as he's healthy, he's box office. 9th best player in the league is Steph Curry. At number 8, from the Detroit Pistons, it is Cade Cunningham. Cade is the 8th best player in the league. Here's why. So he's a double-double threat any given night. He can give you 25 and 10 any given night for the Detroit Pistons. Getting this Detroit team, I said it all season long because I never really bought the Pistons as a legit contender. Getting that team to 60 wins with as limited offensive team as they had. I know they have Tobias Harris and they have Jalen Duren and Duncan Robinson, like guys who are good in their roles, but not a true number 2 scorer next to Cade. The turnovers were a problem in the playoffs, but I think the fact that he got him to 60 wins, was a legit MVP candidate, first team All-NBA, got them to a Game 7 in the second round. I get it didn't end well against Cleveland, but I was really impressed with what I saw from Cade this year. I mean, 2 years ago, folks, the Pistons were by far the worst team in basketball. Year after that, they're in the playoffs. Year after that, they're top seed in the Eastern Conference. Like, there's something to say about that. And maybe a little storyline for next year. For as limited as Detroit is offensively, during the regular season in the East, no one gave the Knicks more problems than Detroit did. So, and by the way, they pushed them 6 2 years ago. We'll see what happens moving forward. Cade Cunningham is the 8th best player in the league. At number 7, it is the Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards, 7th best player in the NBA from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Ant-Man's number 7. So, if you had polled, folks 2 years ago and said, everyone kind of generally agrees the best players in the NBA, they're all international. It's Shea, it's Wemby, Giannis, Luka, Jokic. But who's the best American player? Who will be the best American player? If you polled people 2 years ago, I think Anthony Edwards would have gotten 80% of the vote, 85% of the vote. Like, you might have had some people say, well, Jason Tatum or maybe Steph or LeBron or KD, you're still hanging on. But most people would have said Anthony Edwards. He's excellent, but he dealt with injuries. To his credit, he was able to get to the Minnesota Timberwolves to the second round. They were able to knock out Denver, albeit with Ant-Man hurt for most of the series. They were able to push San Antonio 6 in round 2. Like, there is an element of, man, had he been healthy, had the Timberwolves not just fallen prey to the injury bug in the postseason, losing DiVincenzo and Ayo Dosunmu. Congrats to that young fellow, by the way. Very deserving of that contract. Could they have gone deeper in the playoffs? Who knows? I'm really interested to see what Minnesota does in terms of the roster around Ant. Looks like they're going to try and, because they just traded Julius Randle, it looks like they're going to go, hey, Ant's the head of the snake, and from there, we're just going depth. We'll see. Ant can still give you 30 a night. He's still a threat to go off on you in the postseason. He's the 7th best player in the NBA. At number 6, this entire show's pretty much been themed off of him. It is the Greek Freak, the newest member of the Miami Heat, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis, First time that he's been outside of my top 5 in quite some time. He's the 6th best player in the NBA. Here's why. When he's healthy, he's 30 and 11 a night on 60% shooting. Like that can't be discounted. But the when healthy, exception or caveat, I should say, does come into fruition when it's, okay, you didn't even play 40 games last year. And 2 years ago, you were out for the entirety of the playoffs, weren't able to be available for your team in Milwaukee. And there's the element of, again, and I get it, he's a forward, he's a very physical player, but it feels like he's an old 31. Still great, but not quite to the level of guy that we saw certainly in that 2021 finals when he had one of the greatest finals performances ever against Phoenix. But even 4 years ago when he took a beat-up, injury-depleted Bucks team and could have easily gotten them to the conference finals had it not been for Grant Williams hitting a bunch of threes in Game 7. So he's going to make Miami better. There's no question about it. He's still 30 and 11 a night when he's healthy. At the same time, the way Miami's roster is constructed, it doesn't feel like they're ready to win a title or certainly even win the Eastern Conference this year. Giannis still great. I'm excited to see him in Miami. We'll see how it plays out. He is the 6th best player in the NBA. At number 5, I seriously thought about putting Giannis in the 5 spot over this guy just because of the gigantic gap defensively between these two. I decided to give the next player the advantage just because of youth and because of more recent playoff success from the Los Angeles Lakers. It is Luka Doncic. So Luka is the 5th best player in the league. Here's why. Listen, he led the league in scoring once again. He is one of the more unstoppable offensive forces. Again, something about these European guys, him, Jokic, what have you, that are not ridiculously athletic. Luka, he was supposed to be in better shape. I mean, I guess relative to last year, he was in better shape, but still points looked like he was a little, for him, on the heavy side. It looked like those injuries may have, bothered him in terms of his hamstring late in the year. He wasn't available for the playoffs, but still, when healthy, when he's ready to go, he is an absolute assassin in the postseason, as evidenced by those first 2 series in his career against the Clippers in the bubble, and then the year after that, goes to the conference finals in 2022, NBA finals 2 years ago. I'm curious, especially if LeBron does end up moving on, and I think he will from LA, how Rob Pelinka, how this Lakers organization wants to construct the roster around Luka. I imagine they probably bring Austin Reeves back if Braun leaves. We'll see how it plays out, but when he's healthy, he's unstoppable offensively. Listen, he's a cone defensively. We know that. He does not believe in playing defense, as evidenced by his entire career. But on the offensive end of the floor, unstoppable. Luka's the 5th best player in the league. At number 4, boy, I did not think he'd fall this far coming out of the playoffs. He was the best player in the world, I think, in the eyes of most. In my eyes, he's now the 4th best. It is Nikola Jokic from the Denver Nuggets. So, Joker's at number 4. Here's the thing. There is a school of thought that not only was Jokic the league MVP this year, ahead of Shea, ahead of Wemby, but that, hey, was this the best year of his career? Not only did he average 29 a game, not only did he average a triple-double for the regular season for the 2nd time in his career, but he became the first player ever in the history of the game to lead the NBA in assists and in rebounds. Again, further solidifying the fact, by far the greatest passing big man of all time. Like that's not a debate. With that being said, A, there's the defensive limitations. B, and more importantly, you can't win the title in 2023, go on that dominant playoff run, then you lose in round 2 in Game 7 after blowing a 20-point lead at home to the T-Wolves in 2024. Then the year after, you go to Game 7 against OKC, get blown off the court, and then the year after that, you lose again to the Timberwolves in the first round when you play awfully, especially in the first 4 games, get locked up by Rudy Gobert. I get Gobert as a DPOY. That can't happen. And the Timberwolves lose Ant. They lose Ayo Dosunmu at the end of the series. They lose Dante DiVincenzo. And you're nowhere to be found. Certainly on defense and offensively, you're not able to produce what we're used to seeing you produce over the course of your time in the NBA. That said, he's still an unstoppable force offensively, can do virtually everything on that end. But we are going to have to start seeing some postseason success from Jokic, from the Nuggets moving forward. Remains to be seen what they'll do this offseason. At number 3, he was at number 2 coming into the postseason. I dinged him a spot in large part because of how he played in his most recent playoff series. It is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Shai, from the Oklahoma City Thunder, is the 3rd best player in the NBA. Here's why. So he's the back-to-back league MVP. People view me as a Shai hater. No, I'm just willing to point out the fact that, yeah, there are times where I'm not sure he's even playing basketball when he's drawing the fouls that he draws. That said, he'd have got my vote last year for MVP. He'd have got my vote this year. for league MVP. He broke Wilt Chamberlain's record, which had stood for 60 years for the most consecutive games scoring 20 or more points. Broke that record. Kudos to Shea. Won a championship and a finals MVP a year ago. With that being said, the really kind of damning stat that we brought up multiple times over the Western Conference Finals, that when he gets the free throw line 8 or more times versus when he gets the free throw line less than that, there's not only an 11-point per game gap in his scoring, but like a 10% gap in shooting percentage. So it's like, oh, are you more reliant on getting to the free throw line than we're giving you credit for? Maybe. Like, that's the adjustments that he will have to make next season, because I think the NBA will get the flopping under control. At least I hope they will. That said, he's still an unbelievable offensive force. He still is. You're shocked when he doesn't give you 30 a night. He carried the load for Oklahoma City with Jalen Williams being hurt, with Chet Holmgren going through his inconsistencies. OKC's going to have a different roster next year. They already traded Aaron Wiggins, so we'll see how it plays out. Shea and the Thunder are going to be contenders next year. Wouldn't shock me if they win the championship. SGA is the third best player in the league. The guy that beat him, the guy that is on a fast track to be the best player in the world sooner rather than later, but not quite, is at number 2, Victor Wembanyama. Wemby from the San Antonio Spurs is the second best player in the NBA, and here's why. So he is, it's not even a contest, the best defensive player in the league. He became the first ever unanimous defensive player of the year. Very well deserved. And then this year, offensively, he gave you 24 and 11. In the postseason, had some just freakish performances, none more so than that game 1 against the Thunder. Man gives you 41 points and 24 rebounds. Hits the game-tying 3 from Curry land in the first overtime to beat Oklahoma City. That helped them win that series. Listen, Wemby did not play well in the finals. He played below his standard. A 7'5" guy barely shot 40% from the field. Like that cannot happen. At the same time, let's put in perspective what this guy did. 22 years old, unanimous DPOY, and leads a very young Spurs team to the finals and knocked out the defending champion Thunder in the process, who they owned in the regular season. So, like, going into next year, OKC is going to be a threat. We know that. I think it's disrespectful to San Antonio to not have them as the favorites to win the West next year. Like, it's a good basketball team. Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, all these guys. But he's the engine. There's no question about that. He's going to dominate the league for years to come. He's going to win God knows how many Defensive Player of the Year awards and maybe some MVPs. Wemby is the second best player in basketball. And a statement I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would make. The best player in the NBA in the year of our Lord 2026 is Jaylen Brunson from the New York Knicks. Jaylen Brunson from the defending champion Knicks, finals MVP. He is the best player in the world. Here's why. I know what you're going to say. Bryson, recency bias. Yeah, of course you're going to take Jaylen Brunson when the guy has this amazing postseason. He wins finals MVP. He's great in the fourth quarter of these series. It is not just that, ladies and gentlemen. Here's what it is. My case for Brunson being the best player in the world is simple. Not only is he great in the playoffs, but is it so much of how we judge these guys? Yeah, they're great, but what do they do in the postseason? And really, what do they do in the finals? This dude, a 6'2" guard, second-round pick out of Villanova, leads the Knicks to a championship. And again, not to take credit from Mikal Bridges, from OG Anunoby, who had the tip in Game 4, or from Cat, or from Josh Hart, any of these guys. None of them were that consistent in the finals, except for him. I mean, he led the Knicks to the greatest comeback in finals history in that Game 4, down 29, comeback to win. But also there's the element of, like, he is in some really kind of rare air right now in terms of, closing out a finals, one of the greatest finals close-up performances ever. We can show you most points to close out a championship. Giannis had 50 in 2021. Bob Pettit had 50 back in 58. But then Jaylen Brunson and Michael Jordan, remember Michael Jordan, that Game 6 against the Utah Jazz, 1998? Well, Jaylen Brunson did that, scored 45 of the New York Knicks' 94 points to beat the San Antonio Spurs, broke a half-century-long drought in New York. And the second part of my case for him being the best player in the world is who you put ahead of him. Like, this isn't a situation where it's Jordan or LeBron or Shaq where they are so far ahead of everybody else as the best player in the world, it's not even a discussion. That's not where he is. My case would be, okay, you gonna put Luka ahead of him, his former teammate? Because since they've been apart, Brunson's done way more than Luka. He's been to a finals, won a championship, been to an additional conference finals, which Luka has not been to. He's been better. Are you going to put Jokic ahead of him, the guy that just got bounced in the first round by a beat-up Timberwolves team? Are you going to put Shea ahead of him? Because I saw Shea against the Spurs defense struggle, and I saw Brunson against the Spurs defense dominate. And he gets like Wemby ahead of Brunson? Listen, next year I think he probably will be. But in the here and now, I watched him play, and Brunson was much better. Who are you taking ahead of him? So that's what I've got. Jaylen Brunson is the best player in the National Basketball Association, and now we can show you the full top 10. From 1 to 10, Brunson, Wemby, SGA, Joker, Luka, Giannis, Ant-Man, Cade, Steph, Jaylen Brown. Those are my top 10 best players in the NBA moving forward, going into next season. So there we go. Got some comments here. Barry Grant Jr. of the Olive Podcast. Shout out to Barry. Check out his show. He does an awesome job. Giannis is running out of gas, in my opinion. Look, the injury history is a concern. The fact that, as I keep bringing up on the show, he's 31. It feels like he's like 34 because of the myriad of injuries. The fact that, again, he has not been he's not been to round 2 since 2022. So 4 years. So it's been gentlemen swept in the first round, albeit he was hurt, but that's part of it. The next year, they get knocked out in the first round. He doesn't play a game. He's beat up or he's hurt against the Pacers. And then the year before or year after that, they get gentlemen swept by Indiana in the first round. And then last year, they win 32 games. Now, that's because he's hurt, but that's part of the story. So I don't necessarily disagree, Barry. Let's see. We got a comment from Major Anthony Nelson. Since we have that sorry-ass player Jovic that need to attack tonight, second-round pick with him sent to Dallas for Klay Thompson. There we have a shooter. So probably referring to what I've said earlier in the fact that Utah has no shooting. I mean, they could. Jovic does have upside, but he hasn't quite met that in Miami. Klay is, obviously, he's not what he once was with my beloved Golden State Warriors, but he's obviously still an excellent catch-and-shoot guy. That's on the board. I think Klay, this is just my gut. This is no inside sourcing whatsoever. My gut tells me he probably gets bought out at some point next year. I think he starts the season on Dallas, gets bought out in around November, December, January, something like that, and then a contender picks him up. Like that. That's my guess, but we'll see how it plays out. Miami would be a good fit for Klay. Major Anthony Nelson says he can still sign LeBron in free agency, let Norm walk, and Wiggins opt out his $30 million contract and restructure from Warriors on the back end. Then you sign LeBron. You could. That's on the board. I do think that, again, still from a basketball perspective, they'd be great defensively. LeBron can still, in spurts, play good defense. Giannis is a great defender. Bam's a great defender. Wiggins can play defense. But again, offensively, where's your identity? Bron could play the league guard role, but again, the shooting's not there. You have no bench. I feel like Giannis's best shot at a title in Miami is actually to come 2 seasons from now, not next year. So like the 2028 season, which by then he's 33, he's in year 15. Is he the same guy? What flexibility did the Heat have to make the team better around him? Like it's a weird spot. So we'll see how it looks. Okay, we're an hour out of the 2026 NBA draft. We hope you'll join us at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Myself, Mike Guido, a number of other guests and Grid Network contributors will be joining us to break down the first round of the 2026 draft. So we hope you'll stop by. So as far as kind of my baseline predictions, I think the Wizards almost certainly go AJ DeMonsa. Doesn't have quite as high of an upside in my view as Darren Peterson, but there's the concerns with Peterson's consistency and what have you. I think DeMonsa goes number 1 to Utah. That second pick for Utah, listen. I'm sorry, DeMonsa goes to the, I was thinking about he played at BYU, goes to Washington. That second pick for the Jazz, more likely than not, they're going to move off Walker Kessler, so they'll need a big. I actually think Utah goes Cam Boozer in this spot, and then Peterson goes to the Grizzlies at number 3, and then we'll see if Memphis can move off John Morant. And then from there, the player I'm really excited to see where he goes is Acuff, the kid out of Arkansas. Electric scorer, had an unbelievable March for the Razorbacks. The question is consistency. There's been some reports of, we're not sure about his effort. We're not sure about these things. Those can be red flags. Anytime people bring up, undersized or, could probably put on more muscle. The muscle thing, literally everybody does. Like everyone gets bigger once they join the NBA. They get professional trainers. They grow in their man body. Like that's not going to be a concern. But once we get into effort, iffy, that to me is, I don't know if you build a franchise around that guy. So I could see Acuff as a guy, if the intel that we've gotten is correct, I could see him falling, not out of the lottery, but maybe to that like number 9 spot, 10 spot. I mean, if he fell to my Golden State Warriors, I'd be thrilled, but I don't necessarily think the Warriors need a cuff. My guess is for Golden State at number 11. I would like Yaxel Landenberg, the kid out of Michigan, because he's a plug and play right now. What is he, 24, 25 years old? I'd like to see us draft him at number 11 if we don't end up trading the pick for Trey Murphy. Like Trey Murphy, it's being reported like a number of teams are in. I think the Lakers are looking to make a move for Trey Murphy, the Clippers, Golden State, basically all the California teams. Trey Murphy is a 3-and-D guy, can shoot the 3 ball at a high level, can give you a 20-night. I think Trey Murphy would be a great fit in Golden State. So if they trade number 11 for him, I'm thrilled. If not, if Landenberg's still on the board at 11, I would take him. I would not be against Golden State taking a man out of Tennessee, Nate Ament. But it's going to be a fun night. Listen, this is the deepest draft that we've had probably since 2018. Again, you go back to that draft. It's Luka, Trae Young, Brunson, DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, like that. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. How could I forget? SGA was in that 2018 draft. And so, like, that is I'm not saying these guys will reach the height of those guys. SGA is a champion and a 2-time MVP. Brunson's a finals MVP, and Luka's a phenomenal scorer. Like, not saying they'll reach those heights, but it's certainly got the depth that we've seen in drafts like 2018. So it'll be very fascinating. But my guess is Debanza goes number 1. I think Boozer goes number 2 to Utah, and I think that Utah ends up moving Walker Kessler. I think Peterson goes number 3 to the Memphis Grizzlies. And Acuff is a guy that I see falling. Going to be very interested to see how that plays out. All right, with that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. We won't be on Carving Up the rest of the week. We'll be back sometime early next week to talk free agency. We'll give you all more intel on that as time goes on. But in the immediate, tune in to the Grid Network's 2026 NBA Draft live reaction show at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Myself, Mike Guido, a number of other Grid Network contributors will be joining to break down the entirety of the first round, start to finish. Listen, we've done the NBA Draft show. This is now our 6th year doing it. I'm as excited for this one as any, just because of the high-end talent in this draft. Like we've had, I think 2024, it's like, high-end talent is not like crazy. You had like the Ricochet kid, Alex Sarr, like 2023, no one in this draft is as good as Wemby, but it didn't have the depth necessarily that this one does. This one has depth. So I'm very, very excited. Tune in 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube, on X, the Grid Network. Very, very excited to have you stop by and join us. Until then, we'll be back next week on Carving Up Live. Stay safe out there. Have a great rest of your week. God bless y'all. Peace out. Trey Murphy. I can feel it. Trey Murphy. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.